Let's go to another NFL player who takes himself somewhat seriously, Tom Brady. He is getting a $8 million raise for 2019 as part of a 3-year contract extension. That's not really an extension. The deal will void on the last day of the new league year, which is March 17th, 2020, according to Ian Rappaport. So he'll be a free agent in 2020, potentially. What do you guys make of Tom Brady's newest contract?
Well, he doesn't want the franchise tag or the transition tag to be in play for next season.
That's right. That's part of the deal.
That's part of the deal. So the way Rap Sheet put it, it hurt a little bit for both sides to do this deal, but it helped both sides a little bit because they both got what they wanted, is the way Rap Sheet put it.
I mean, it definitely helps the Patriots because I think that Brady's been vastly underpaid for a very long time, and I also have always wondered if he had married just a normal civilian woman as opposed to a supermodel, if he might have asked for more money going back a long way. But at this point, they don't need to be trapped or yanked into guaranteed money or future money that may not be there for a player himself. And it makes sense.
And ultimately, when you've got somebody that's 42 years old, we've seen a little bit of this with the way that Drew Brees' contract has been handled.
It's almost the exact same thing as Drew Brees' contract, just less money.
And so it's something that, not every NFL player can do it, but not every NFL player is going to be able to play into their early 40s and late 30s in this situation. And I just want to see that that 5 seconds where we actually think that Tom Brady is going to be a free agent. If people are going to send flights,
Remember, I was trying to, stir it up when Drew Brees was getting closer, and it did feel like there was like a 1 in 20 chance. And I believe that with Tom Brady. I think
Matt Patricia's going to be on his doorstep at midnight.
It's shocking how many things we say on this podcast and on TV of where we say with utter confidence. When the NFL has treated us, you never say never against anything. Is it possible that Tom Brady could play for another team with a number of different circumstances? I think it's possible. I think it's very unlikely, but I think this contract was interesting in that giving a guy a raise, just an $8 million raise out of nowhere, is rare, but that's what the Patriots did with Tom Brady a year ago, and setting up the contract so that he's going to hit free agency almost no matter what. They can't sign him to another contract before then is really rare. And I think it's both sides a little bit staring each other down. I think Tom Brady would like to have more guaranteed money, but he's not really committing to playing past this year. I don't think he's told the Patriots he's definitely doing that. And I think Bill Belichick likes the idea that if he gets hurt or if he's terrible in 2019, that they could cut him. Or that they wouldn't bring him back, I think, or that it would reach a natural end. I think he likes that out. I think that's all part of this.
Doesn't this particular relationship, it's also, you want to call it unprecedented, it's different than any other quarterback-team relationship because I think that Tom Brady, maybe he's a little peeved not publicly to get that extension, has a relationship with Robert Kraft where no one's going to do the other side wrong. I would love to see Mike Vrabel sneak in and make a call and pull Tom Brady down to Tennessee for a year or something, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, the streets would actually run red with blood. There would be real consequences for Tom Brady playing somewhere else, and why not? I can't imagine it.
He was a little nonplussed, though.
So
he spoke to the media before Ian's report about the voidable years came out.
I'm not worried. I'm really not worried about it. I'm secure for this year, and I think at least I get a few first-team reps out there.
And listening to him, I was like, you know what? He's a little ambivalent about this. He said it is what it is. That's a good line. And then he has a big pause, almost thinking of what he's going to say. Whoever said it, it's very pertinent. Like I said, there's a lot of guys who have 1 year left on his contract. So the situation is, I've got 1 year to go, and we'll see what happens. And he said, I'm basically like any other player that's having to prove himself, and he's on a year-to-year basis. And that's probably been true of Brady for a year or two, the way that Bill Belichick is. But I do think it's interesting because the way that it was presented in the media and even from Brady last week, Tom Curran had a really smart piece that Belichick almost puts this to the side. Brady put it on Kraft. And I think this has worked out, and there's no way to know this, but reading between the lines, I think this has worked out between Brady and Kraft. And Belichick is fine with that because it's Tom Brady. But it's almost like there's a little bit of something still going on there.
Maybe, but
Tom
I also
Brady's
think
competitive.
I think on the spectrum of wanting to talk about money, you've got Jalen Ramsey in his Brinks truck and megaphones,
Sure.
and then on the other end, you've got Tom Brady at the end of his career not wanting to have it be a big news item, probably.
This is the same guy who voluntarily moved $27 million in guarantees to $24 million in non-guarantees a few years ago. I mean, I just don't buy that he's like really ticked off at the Patriots
Oh, no,
because
I
of the
don't-
situation.
I agree with
he's
you
in.
on
I'm
that.
not saying that either, but I think in a perfect world, this contract, in his world, any contract negotiation that's typical, that someone wants more than they get, and I think he wanted more than he maybe got in this case.
But as Mark said, it's a unique situation, and if we wanted to start the Gregg Rosenthal and Patrick Claybon Performance Weightlifting Center,
Whoa.
it would be tough for us to put it in Patriot Place, hundreds of feet away
No.
from Gillette Stadium.
I mean, for multiple reasons.
yeah,
but
the TB12 Performance Center is there, and it's there because the relationship between Tom and
they're
the ownership is pretty good.
And, they're partners for life. I mean, that was the thing that Earl Thomas said about Pete Carroll. I don't know I think this was public. Essentially, like, this guy's essentially torching our relationship when we're going to be partners for life. We're going to be champions for life. We're going to be meeting and doing sponsorship things and getting together with the 20th anniversary team. And that's Earl Thomas and Pete Carroll. Like, Bill Bell, especially Robert Kraft and Tom Brady, are essentially business partners for the next 30
here's where I
years.
could see it get thorny is when Tom Brady comes for Scott Zolak's color analyst job. That's when it gets ugly.
I want to see Tom, if Tom Brady just has an unbelievable season and then he gets to free agency and just holds the Patriots over a barrel, I think he would.
Why are you
I think he would
rooting
enjoy
for?
that.
Why are you rooting for this consternation between the two?
It's like an abusive relationship with Greg.
What? No, I think
it just doesn't
he
seem to
hasn't been
exist.
abused.
I just think if anyone deserves a little bit of just break all the rules, it's Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Like, just give him the guaranteed money. Mess up your salary cap a little next year. Tom Brady built that.
What are you
stadium,
talking about? How big does his yacht have to be?
The fairy tale ending to a true underdog story. Tom Brady against all odds.
Another underdog story. Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, who was talking about him as a third-round pick a few years ago? Now he's one of the best pass rushers in the league. He ended his holdout over the weekend with the Jaguars, and he said, I'm ready to play, and he's not expecting to get a new contract. He'll play for about $2 million this year in the fourth year of his rookie deal. Patrick Claybon. Little Ngakoue heat.
I unfortunately, with his soundbite when he came back, he invoked "it is what it is," which I always can't stand. But the holdout kind of answered his question. Like, if the Jags wanted to commit to him long term, they could have done it, but they don't. They draft Josh Allen in the first round, and it kind of seems like he's on his way out. But in terms of production, sack production, his numbers are up there in the first 3 years with Bosa and Khalil Mack.
I mean, they're better than Bosa's.
He's not nearly the run stuffer that any of these guys are.
Yeah, his production elsewhere isn't that, so that's his problem. But they had him out there for 74% of the snaps last year, so it's not like he's some situational guy.
No.
What if they do want to extend him, but he wants $20 million instead of say $15 million?
It's
Right, we don't have the backstory.
It sounded like they were approaching $20 million even with the guarantees. He probably, if I'm him, you would want to have D Ford contract or better. He's been a better player than D Ford consistently.
I'd much rather have D Ford.
And I think Jack really because
Yes.
I wouldn't just because he's had 1 year out of 4 where
he said two.
where he helped your team. He had about 1.5. He had half of.
He played at a Pro Bowl
2016.
level in 2 different seasons.
I think the Jaguars would have signed him to this contract if it wasn't for Blake Bortles and Malik Jackson and Telvin Smith. I mean, they have $25 million in dead money that Tom Coughlin's basically burned of Shad Khan's. I mean, they are paying, they were paying Blake Bortles more money than the Patriots were paying Tom Brady going into this weekend before that raise. So, like, they've wasted a lot of their money. They have some cap issues, and I think that got in his way. But eventually he'll get paid. He reminds me a little bit of DeMarcus Lawrence, who had to wait an extra year, but then I think
Situationally.
got more money than he would have anyway.
When you go into the Hall of Fame of weird sports injuries, we have a new one, and it's submitted by Antonio Brown, the prized trade acquisition of the Raiders, who had a mysterious foot ailment that he's been dealing with for weeks now, and we didn't get really any true insight into how he injured the feet? I mean, obviously it's the offseason. How would you have a foot injury that would basically wipe you out of training camp to this point? Hoping to hear more on Hard Knocks last night. You didn't get any more details from Hard Knocks, but there was a report that came out on NBC Sports on Tuesday that he was dealing with frostbite on his feet because he went into one of those cryo chamber things. Is it a cryo chamber?
Cryotherapy
chamber, but wasn't wearing the right shoes, so it messed up his feet, leading to blistering and peeling and all that. And it was now, so that was thrown out there Tuesday, and then Wednesday confirmed by ESPN, confirmed by NFL Network, that is indeed how Brown injured himself. And now you could connect the dots, Mark, why John Gruden, we got the report a few days ago, was annoyed that he hasn't had his star player on the field. This is an all-timer. All-timer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it keeps up a proud 5,000-year tradition where the first case of frostbite was discovered on the feet of a pre-Columbian mummy in the Chilean mountains. But I will say this, because these athletes, they're doing all this stuff in the off-season, and I wouldn't put it past it to have a cryo chamber in his own house. But I would just say this: if it's in a facility, the same way when you go to the dentist, and if someone, a dental assistant, took a molar out of your mouth by mistake without any warning, if someone allowed him to go into this chamber with the wrong footwear, is that on Antonio Brown or someone else?
Or with no footwear.
Or with no footwear. I don't have the facts
here.
He
probably just didn't know the.
Well, I read that this took place in Europe.
Oh.
Well,
and for that reason, he can be placed on the not football injury list. Or the Raiders, if they wanted to, could seek some money back because this is a non-football injury. It happened in Europe, not playing football.
But he already practiced, right? So I mean, he went out there. It's frustrating, and maybe we'll talk AB and Hard Knocks, but you could see how frustrating it is, and it kind of makes sense because when he showed maybe he wanted this to get out there because when he showed the pictures of his feet on Instagram, many people's reactions were like, those aren't blisters. I don't know what is happening there, but that's not a. Those
now makes sense.
You can see a guy who is famous essentially for his practice regimen is being, not able to do it because it's a real thing, and they don't seem to know that he's out he's out indefinitely. They don't know.
I would say, where are we now? So today's Wednesday, you say? I'll take your word for it. August 7th. I mean, if by the time we get to next week and he's still not practicing, then it's time to get legitimately nervous. So that's why you kind of hesitate. You don't want to make too much light of it and have too much fun with it, but at the same time, it's pretty funny. I mean, it's like a guy that was trapped on Mount Everest for 3 months who was saved and rescued. That's what his feet would look like.
Yeah, and the pictures make a lot more sense, but frostbite essentially destroys nerve endings and can lead to amputation in the most severe cases.
Right, it's serious and it's a story, but you're right, Dan. There would be something, funny if someone missed week 4 because of gangrene. You know what I mean? Which is basically what's happening here.
It's a serious
sort of a World War I injury.
Right. What is happening?
And
it's like a foxhole injury.
And there were two. I was a little confused with how it was presented on Hard Knocks, but at one point they show him working out with his personal trainer, and he is moving around gingerly. And I wrote on NFL.com, it was kind of like a 48-year-old dad at a flag football where he's all gimpy and trying to sprint, but you can tell his body is just not going along with him. Maybe certain members of our softball team look this way.
That's how I feel running the bases.
And then you saw him in camp for a practice, and I think he practiced around July 30th.
For 30 minutes.
Yes.
And he was lighting everyone
up. He looked like Antonio Brown.
He looked good. He was amazing. And that's what everyone who watched the practice said was he torched everyone in front of him, but he also lasted 30 minutes, and then he had to stop. So he was probably playing through pain.
What a mess. Hopefully it gets worked out soon, but I can understand why John Gruden's pissed. I mean, come on. This is Antonio Brown.
Just a bit. Much like, the front office that invested millions of dollars.
In Canton, there were great moments. And, there were, as always, it's cool to see the guys getting their bus and seeing how much it means to them and the interaction between the Hall of Famers and then hearing them speak. Patrick, did you have any takeaways watching the ceremony on Saturday?
I guess my takeaway was either I understand the Hall a little bit more as the guys that I associate with my adolescence and my coming to football as they start to make it in. And I've always felt that Ed Reed and Champ Bailey were some of the best football players that I'd ever seen. And to see them up there on that stage, it was kind of like I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
A little bit more, because I've seen the Hall and the consternation with T.O. and there's other things that have pushed me away from maybe leaning into it as much as other people have. But now I see it more. You know, these are the jerseys that I had, the guys that I wanted to watch.
Did you have an Ed Reed jersey?
Yeah. I had an Ed Reed jersey, because not that I was this Miami fan, but in the Boston College game in 2001, when it was close, Boston College is on the 20, they throw an interception to a D lineman, and Ed Reed takes it from him in the most like impossibly dangerous situation. Like, what are you doing? And returns it for a touchdown. And it's like, yes, that's what I want for myself.
That's maybe like the perfect Ed Reed play if there is.
Oh, yeah.
And so, to see those guys go in, and obviously the way Champ Bailey ended his speech, imploring people to listen to us when we say this is what's happening in the world, to at least listen. And I appreciate that, because I mean, as you guys know, I'm probably, people would probably say the way I feel about things are extreme. And so whenever guys can bridge that gap and make it a little more easy for people to accept the way I feel about our planet, I like that. So shout out to Champ for that.
That was the number one moment for me, was Champ Bailey's speech, and specifically that part of it mentions, like, you're used to seeing us size and aggression, football players, especially the black football players, and here he is with a forum asking humbly, very humbly, when we tell you there are many challenges we face because of the color of our skin, please listen. When we say about our fears and our fears for our children, please listen. But to me, that was a very important part of our national discussion. Please listen. They have stories to tell that you will never know.
I thought the other stories that were told as well, that I feel like you learn, if it's someone, even if you think you know who Ed Reed is, and there's a lot of content about Ed Reed over the years, like, I just loved hearing how he got even to college and to the NFL. And he points out someone like his teacher, Miss Hall, who he'd lived with for a while and who saw him through so much. He went out of his way to name every equipment manager that he worked with, which I thought he was a completist in the sense of his thankfulness, and he dug in so deep with his mom and his dad, raised in West. Made me think of you a little bit, like he was in a one-bedroom apartment with 4 boys. That wasn't your case, but you had 6 other brothers. That's a lot. I have 2 boys in my house, and I feel like the roof's popping off all the time. But Ed Reed just showed this incredible appreciation. And
give
even
the barbers a shout out.
The barber, and we think we know, for instance, like who Chuck Pagano is based on his minor run with the Colts, and we've got the book on Chuck Pagano. And then you hear from Ed Reed that it was Chuck Pagano that recruited him, that fostered a relationship with him, that taught him how to be a DB first. It's like these guys, and it hits a little bit on Gilbrand too, telling little stories about Bill Belichick catching passes from Staubach on the during practice when his father was around and stuff. That Gilbrand had all these little innuendos and people that he wove into it as well. Their history, these guys have been around the game for 40, 50 years. You got to take a step back when you've only been looking at it and covering it for a shorter amount of time from the outside. They know things we'll never know and have seen things we'll never see.
And I'm glad that they have this forum to do this, because like football culture kind of states that you should keep your nose to the grindstone and just say the exact thing that you're doing. And it sucks that we have to wait 5 years until after Champ Bailey retires for him to provide his thoughts on this topic, or any topic in particular. I wish there was, and maybe it's different now with social media and we're able to get this, but it just feels unfortunate that we have to wait so long to be exposed to these great ideas and great men until this point.
Well, yeah, most of them had no forum. They did not have Twitter. They did not have any way to communicate anything outside
there's always
of their
like a
media availability.
There's always like an awkward or funny moment, and I'm gonna have Erica play the one from Ed Reed that really stuck out to me.
I'd like to thank that organization, Steve Bisciotti, Ozzie Newsome, Coach Belichick, his staff, Coach Harbs, his staff. There's too many people to mention.
It's tough. You feel because it's
people,
just.
man, but I
he
love
meant
all
to say
y'all guys, man.
Brian Billick. That's fine. He meant to say Brian
And they even-
Billick.
yeah.
And it's tough because if you're up there and he's gonna realize that afterwards, and he's gonna be annoyed about it. It's like, but you can't change. You can't take it back. That's it. That was Brian Billick's. That was it.
I also thought Reed was getting booed
He
here and
said
there.
Belichick. Oh.
Reed was getting booed here and there by a heavy Browns crowd and Canton, Ohio crowd. And also, you got Bengals fans coming up. And he basically said, listen, I love the Browns and the Bengals. I respect those organizations. You guys gave me 30 interceptions. He's like, it's not my fault you kept changing quarterbacks. And, come on, this guy's a good sport. I thought his speech was my favorite of the group.
All right, let's get to it. Hard Knocks is back. The acclaimed, venerable, cunning HBO docuseries.
Okay.
Return for a 14th season on Tuesday. The subject, of course, the Oakland Raiders. And, yes, for the 8th year, the Zeus are writing up episode recaps on NFL.com. Where have the years gone?
And getting better, I might add.
They have gotten
thank you,
markedly better and better organized.
Not that
Well, I
it
just
needed to. But the writing itself has gotten, you're bringing it up a level.
You have
you just have I enjoy them.
You have a historical grasp of the subject, some historical
That helps.
knowledge. It does.
Yeah.
So
It kind of pours out of you when you track the show this close over the years. And this was always, once it was announced, once it was rumored, it was always going to be about John Gruden. And there were other players, and we'll get to it, that jumped out, and coaches perhaps. But the episode opens, the first thing you hear from is John Gruden on the field. And that was kind of, I think, what the table setting was in episode 1. That this is what the John Gruden experience is in Oakland. Let's hear a little bit from the second-year coach.
And there's a saying around here, once a Raider, always a Raider. We are going to be physical. Most importantly, we're going to be smart, and we're going to be relentless. You can lead the league in effort because it takes no talent. It's just a decision that you make. We have a chance to be one hell of a big story this year, man, if we put our heart and soul into this football team. We want to win, and we want to win now. Knock on wood if you're with me, okay?
We should start doing that, by the way. Whenever if we're having a show meeting and so we're all in agreement on that, go, and we all knock the table together.
all in.
That feels like a good move. So Wes, I'll start here with this episode. First of all, I don't think for the hype building up, I don't think it was one of the all-time Hard Knocks episodes. I thought the premiere last year, for instance, with the Browns was much more interesting. I don't think this was a dud by any stretch, but I think that that you want to come out of each episode. Like last year, it was a home run because you had all that Palace intrigue involving Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson, and Freddie Kitchens, who people forget was also in that argument about guys sitting out practice, and that was such catnip for HBO Films and, of course, the audience. Nothing quite that good in this premiere, but I did get me thinking as I'm watching it how John Gruden, even though he did the cliche trope thing as the head coach leading up to the show's premiere, where he said, "Oh, I don't need to be on Hard Knocks." John Gruden, this is a good platform for a guy who, and this room right here is a good microcosm of that. Because Scott, I know Mark, you've been outspoken on this, but you're far from alone. The idea that why should you believe in John Gruden as a head coach in 2019? And he is in the midst of a teardown and rebuild, and it's going to take years to show whether or not he's somebody who should have your respect as a head coach in the modern NFL landscape. But for now, a show like this can show what John Gruden really does behind the scenes. And I think, to me, the first episode, he came off well. He didn't come off as a relic to me. So that was one takeaway to me, that he seemed like he was in control of the ship. He didn't feel like an ancient guy trying to push his old teachings onto a new generation. But it is important to know, Wes, and remember how long it's been since Gruden was relevant as a coach. 2007 was the last time he took a team to the playoffs, which is forever ago in any measure, but especially in the NFL. What were your takeaways on Gruden in episode 1?
I think as far as Gruden goes, I think what you say is true. Maybe to most people he came off well. I think I've reached my saturation point with John Gruden, and to me he always comes off as a relentless hype man, salesman, carnival barker. I just don't believe anything he says.
Well, he's great at a party. Like, that's what they had that little get-together at the end where, what was it, season ticket holders? Or
I think it was ex-players,
ex-players. It was a
Once
lot.
a Raider, always a
And I
Raider.
was just thinking, like, John Gruden would be a great guy to have a party. I think it'd be a great guy to have on your Monday Night Football
He's a
team that you,
raconteur.
like, work with him. Like, he's just great at schmoozing and dealing with people. And he is a little bit of a salesman, too. And so
A little bit.
whether that helps, yeah, he's
I
absolutely.
think all coaches have to be
right.
salesmen
Whether
in a
that
way,
helps
though.
as a head coach, I don't know. Like, the speeches and the knocking and the always a Raider, it's like, you can see if you're a veteran that's been there for a while, that stuff's only going to work for so long. Like, I'd love to have an analytics, study how much speeches help. Like, are speeches going away in post-analytics world? Because my analytics say you can make no speeches and it probably wouldn't make any difference.
That said, because I already came in with fearing this.
But I enjoyed him, by the way. I love watching.
I came in fearing this edition of Hard Knocks for a couple of reasons. And I would say I would have put Gruden and Antonio Brown at the top of the list, and I put them both in my winners column personally because the way they directed the episode, which wasn't a total banger, but I thought they shied away from total tropes and some of the stuff that I saw with the Rams season that with 8 minutes in, I was done with that one. I thought they understated some things, and Gruden to me, I think I agree with you, Wes, that all that stuff I feel too. But I kind of came away liking him and thought that he did himself a service. And the Raiders overall, I mean, I thought when we see Mark Davis, who knows what's going to happen there. Everyone kind of was a little bit less annoying to me and more watchable than I thought they would be.
Incredible news. Thank you to Patrick Claybon for helping us out. And now you are up to date with all the happenings in the National Football League. Mark, pinch yourself.
I am pinching. Where does Patrick Claybon go when he's not guesting on the show? Do we just put him inside of a Patrick Claybon typed box and keep him there and then wheel him
like
back
in Pulp
out?
Fiction?
I don't know. I'm not sure where. Yeah.
Cryotherapy
Zed's?
with Antonio
I think that might be
Brown.
it. Yeah.
Make sure you put those shoes on, Patrick, if indeed that is what you do when you're not in the studio. All right. We'll be back next week with more of everything you need to know. SiriusXM's where it's at, and so is the Around the NFL podcast. Till next week.